Today on the newscast, Israel carries out major airstrikes in Syria, very likely targeting Iranian weapon shipments. Get all the breaking details next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. Breaking news here today, overnight, early this morning, December 28th, according to Syrian state media, Israel conducted major airstrikes against the Syrian port city of Latakia. Now, this would be the second time in the past month alone that Israel struck targets in Latakia. We had similar strikes back on December 7th, which we reported on here on the Watchman Newscast. Now, according to the Syrian regime, a container yard at the port was targeted, very similar to the target earlier this month. The big question, of course, what was in the container? Why did Israel feel compelled to carry out these major strikes? More on that in a minute, but real quick, some of the details surrounding this strike. According to the Syrian regime, the missiles came from the direction of the Mediterranean Sea, which makes sense, of course, because Latakia is on the Mediterranean. It's southwest of the city of Aleppo, and it is really the most strategic port in that country. A great deal of imports coming into Syria pass through Latakia, and many of those imports these days, no doubt, are coming from the Iranian regime. Now, Israel over the past few years has seemed a bit hesitant to strike in Latakia. This is very rare, what we've seen over the past few weeks, folks, and the main reason for that clearly is that Russia has a major military presence near Latakia, including a major base there. Obviously, Israel doesn't want to have some kind of mishap where Russian forces are accidentally targeted. We had the meeting between Naftali Bennett, the Israeli Prime Minister, and Russian President Vladimir Putin back in October, which by all accounts went pretty well, and it seems to be that there is some sort of understanding that was reached. Pretty bold, again, for Israel to carry out strikes in Latakia. So that tells you there must be some sort of high-value targets there. Now, again, according to the Syrians, this caused massive damage, and I quote, a massive blast resulting from these Israeli airstrikes, and some of the areas around the port were also affected. There were no casualties, but it seems that the target in this container yard was very likely taken out in these Israeli airstrikes, which brings us to the containers. Again, what was inside? Well, you think of precision-guided munitions first and foremost, folks. We've talked about that many times here on the newscast. These PGMs, precision-guided missiles, or PGMs for short, could very well be the trigger for a major regional confrontation. That's how seriously Israel takes them as a threat, and precision-guided missiles do exactly what their name says. They are designed to hit the target with great precision and accuracy. If the likes of Hezbollah were to get their hands on PGMs, it would be a major game changer. Israel knows this, and that's why you've seen hundreds, possibly even close to 1,000 at least, airstrikes inside Syria over the past few years against Iranian and Hezbollah targets. Many times, weapons shipments and weapons depots are targeted in these Israeli airstrikes in Syria, and we know that the Iranian regime is hell-bent on providing its most lethal proxy, Hezbollah, with the capability to assemble these PGMs and strike Israel. They're not transiting a fully intact precision-guided missile across Syria into the hands of Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, but what they are doing is shipping the parts, and then Hezbollah can assemble the parts and build that PGM at a later date. Israel says, no way, a red line. We will not allow you to cross, and that may very well be the target in Latakia in these strikes over the past month. Again, folks, when Israel is taking this very rare step of carrying out airstrikes in Latakia twice in the span of a few weeks, in the shadow of Russian forces there, you know, number one, this, again, had to be a pretty important target that Israel felt threatened by. And secondly, Israel must feel pretty confident right now about its standing with the Putin regime and Russia. Where that goes, however, remains to be seen. I don't think that regime can be trusted. And prophetically as well, as we go down the line, things seem to be set to develop there. So major news there, the strike in Latakia. Israel has had no comment, which is the MO, of course, of the Israeli government when things like this happen. But folks, again, as we move into 2022, Syria is an absolute tinderbox, and it could be a trigger point for that great northern war that we've talked about a lot here on the newscast over the past few months. Speaking of Israel and Syria and the Assad regime being at loggerheads, the Israeli government announced yesterday, December 27th, that they are looking to double the Israeli population on the Golan Heights. Now, if you watch us here on the newscast, you know that we love the Golan. It is a beautiful mountainous region, great natural beauty. You've had the Jewish people living there for well over 2,000 years. It is an integral part of the state of Israel. Well, it fell out of Israeli hands, but in 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel recaptured the Golan Heights, put aside the biblical ancestral heritage of the Jewish people there and the natural beauty of the place. It is an absolutely irreplaceable security buffer, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at the Golan Heights, mountainous, whoever possesses the Golan Heights has the high ground in a future conflict between Israel and Syria. And that's really the main reason Israel can never relinquish the Golan Heights. Now the Israeli government realizes that very well and is saying, hey, let's build up the Golan. This is our moment. They're going to spend over $300 million or 1 billion shekels in this project to really build up that strategic region. Now, we're talking today about the situation to Israel's north. We hit on Syria, but what about Lebanon? Israel's defense ministry announced this week Operation Shield of the North, which is an all-out effort by Israel to bolster the defenses of the Israeli communities along that Lebanon border, Israel's northernmost point. And what they're doing right now is building up bomb shelters in those communities in anticipation of a coming conflict with Hezbollah. Hezbollah, which, by the way, possesses, some 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at every inch of Israel, but of course, in particular, at northern Israel, because Hezbollah and those rockets are in such close proximity based in that southern Lebanon stronghold. So bomb shelters being bolstered there in northern Israel in anticipation of that coming great northern war that we've told you about here on the newscast. No one wants to see it, but it very likely is a question not of if, but when Israel eventually will be forced to face off with Hezbollah, the Iranian regime, and their various terror allies in southern Lebanon and in Syria. So things are certainly building towards that northern war. Israel is preparing, they're drilling. By the same token, the Iranian regime is conducting military drills as well. So folks, fasten your seatbelts and stay in prayer as we head into 2022. It will be a very eventful year, and we've got you covered here on the Watchman Newscast. Be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell if you haven't yet, so you get alerts every time a new video, a new update is posted. Hey, two quick things here before we go. Number one, tomorrow, Wednesday, December 29th, we will have a Watchman Newscast live stream right here on the channel between 4 and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We will review what went down in 2021 and what is coming in 2022 as the prophetic chess pieces move on the board in a major way. Be sure to bring your questions also for our Q&A session. Again, that's tomorrow. Number two, we've showed you here on the newscast how Israel has Iron Dome to help defend against rockets and missiles from the likes of Hezbollah. Well, I want to tell you about a great company we're partnering with here that can help act as an Iron Dome for your family online. Canopy is cutting-edge Israeli technology software specifically developed to enable families to enjoy the good of the internet without the bad, and there's plenty of that out there, as we all know. Canopy is an incredible internet filter that detects and blocks explicit content on your kids' devices in real time. And it's the only tool out there that can deter and prevent sexting. Folks, as the father of a teenager and a preteen, I know how challenging it is to raise kids in this digital age and with social media. That's why I'm partnering with Canopy. It's Israeli innovation at work, and I know it will bless your family. Just visit canopy.us/Watchman and use the discount code Watchman15 to get a free 30-day trial and 15% off your Canopy subscription. It's a great deal and an excellent product that we feel strongly about, and we encourage you to check it out. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.